Ms. Tulika Pandey. I would like to point out that in the interest of time, she has been requested to curtail her talk to half an hour. And so expect to move for lunch in half an hour from now. And we should try to also do the lunch very fast in the dining hall and come back here by 1:45.
Thank you, Professor. The two talks on security and the ways we could come under attack made me wear my full overcoat on. I'm back trying to save myself. No, it's more a little cold and therefore I say that. And what I have done here is to lead the trustworthy computing to all of you, engineers and researchers who are looking at the areas of how to bring in trust in our systems. And my focus, coming from the Government of India and the areas in which I'm working, is more to looking at how the government could deploy cloud. So I come with a completely different angle in this workshop today. So not taking more time on that, let me just say that this is a typical technology development scenario by most governments till a few years back. This is not just India, but any government. This was this way in which we started looking at our technology and deployments for delivering services and policies for the citizens of our country. And these are some of the important recipes of good governance that today is important for each government to look at, so as to be able to convert its administration-centric or technology-centric way of looking at deploying technology to reach out services to citizen service-centric approach. I would not be speaking more than a line or two for each of the slides that I present here, because I need to finish in 20 minutes so as to allow you to have your lunch in good time. So these are the three important aspects of citizen-centric approach, where we're talking about anytime, anywhere ability of service, improved quality of service, transparent and efficient and secure delivery of services to the citizen. So these are the questions that come to the mind when we look at cloud computing in government. Is the government machinery ready for it? Is the government ready with provisioning of high-speed, always-on internet access across the nation to all? If so, is it affordable? And can the government today ensure a robust and reliable internet connectivity to take on cloud deployment for reaching out with services to public at large? The first scope, the most important, always on connectivity. The reason why this is a very heavy slide is I have borrowed the material from the TRI declaration, which is very recent, where they have declared that a National Optical Fiber Authority, which will be the central agency for reaching out optical fiber across the country, and there will be a State Optical Fiber Authority established. And the focus of these two authorities would be to roll out 25 million route kilometers of fiber for national broadband network. And this would cover around 63 large cities, 4,315 cities and towns, and the cost would be a little high. The TRI also aims for 75 million broadband connections by 2012 and 160 broadband connections at the speeds of 10 megabits per second in most of the large cities, and at least 4 megabits per second in the Tier 2 cities or the smaller cities where we see little less internet traffic. And in the rural areas or regions far wide where the traffic is even lower, insurance of a 2 Mbps connectivity is what is being targeted by the year 2014. Why this is important for us to know and to feel happy about is the first need for reaching out cloud or deploying cloud by the government would be this fiber backbone, which is essential, which wireless services may not be able to support. So there is a 2G wireless internet connection that supports a maximum speed of 144 kilobits per second. And with the allocation of 3G, we are expecting that we will have 14.4 megabits per second services at a 5 megahertz carrier, which would go further, much higher if we look at 20 megahertz spectrums. So the first focus on the government is on the job. And the next is to look at the infrastructure setup and the services that the government needs to keep in place if we are looking at cloud computing in future. So the areas are the government to government, government to citizen, government to businesses, and of course the government to environment. What are the focuses? If we are looking at equitable access, for G2G we need groupware, for G2C a government portal, and for G2C e-customs. Similarly, we essentially require centralized data centers so as to reach out certain basic services. One example is education, but we also can mention healthcare and several other very important services which are citizen services, essentially which is the job of the government of the world to deliver. What are the security and authorization methods, authentication methods that we need here? Basically, we need the PKI to support these in two-way interaction between the citizen and the government. The motivations for each are efficiency and productivity. And if you look at G2C, the motivation is quality of service and inclusiveness. And if you're looking at the G2B services, the motivation would be transparency and openness. And this is where the government needs to work much harder. I've tried to put them in phases where we can talk about the citizen-centric rollout of services. So first phase is to set up our basic infrastructures in place. And we have certain good examples of the statewide area networks being established, the state data centers being established, 51 state data centers to be established, and most of them are already established. I'll just run through the slides of the status in the next few slides. And we have common service centers there. The most recent and notable work that has done is to get out the unique IDs, which will allow each of us citizens to be able to access services online without much efforts, and also have vehicle registrations and passport services. Next is our initiative on the National E-Government program, wherein we have mission mode projects which will see that each of these initiatives the government does have the last mile access and implementation, which is often found to be the only worry of the government's actual success rate in terms of reaching out services to citizens. We have the IT Act in place, we have the PKI in place, we have the Computer Emergency Response Team of India in place, which is interacting with the world search. In the phase 3, we are looking up at the sophistication of national information networks that needs to be set in place, which is not yet covered by us, which is the next effort that we make. And the last will be the integration of these sophistication such that we are able to offer seamless and ubiquitous cloud-based services to our citizens. Like I said, this is the status of the state data center establishments. We have more than 40% of them already in place and are now being filled up. These data centers would help us consolidate the state level information base, which will be easy for us to then export and have a central management in terms of reaching out cloud computing services. The next is the statewide area network implementation status. So most of these statewide area networks are now established. The ones in green are all the ones which have been implemented, and you will see that most of the major states of the country now have their statewide area networks in place. And in some of the major states like the Andhra Pradesh and Arunachal Pradesh, we are seeing that the implementation would be over by the next quarter of this financial year. By March, we would see that these would be in place. And for the other states of Rajasthan and Jammu and Kashmir, we are already in the bid process, and we hope to be able to achieve the establishment of the network, statewide area network, within a year's time. We plan to have 1 lakh service centers, common service centers, and we already have established 86,521 of them. They are up and running. There have been certain cases of failure, but this is because we are working in the model of public-private partnership. And in some cases, when you have partners, you do have issues of their validation, and there are times when we need to retract the services that we offer them. The other important initiative that the government has taken towards consolidation is to look at the knowledge network, the establishment of the knowledge network, which is the initiative to fill in the gaps where the connectivity amongst the academia and the R&D institutions are missing. The government's initiative is to link them all up to be able to do collaborative research and development of content. This is a new initiative, and which has 4 backbone at 34 locations. And the minimum bandwidth that is proposed is at 10 gigabits per second, links to most of these 500 nodes that are being established across the country. And of course, there are certain future targets which we can always look at when the slides are available to you to view later. Just wanted to run through some of the important aspects of the unique ID, because this was very welcome by this country and would allow each one of us to have access to government services through use of these unique IDs that we have. I would not go into details while I had some few slides to explain, but I think I just listed some of the benefits and the other details because I thought this would be of interest to many of our students to understand how this has been done in the country. I've already spoken about the mission mode projects, and under the National E-Governance Plan, we have 10 central mission mode projects, 10 state mission mode projects, and a number of integrated mission mode projects. And you can see that the focus from the center has been on the major aspects of banking, central excise and customs. So just to bring forth the point that the government is in place towards consolidation not only of its infrastructure but also its service mechanisms, such that in the next future, when we're talking about reaching out services through the cloud, we are very much in line with the technology advancement that is happening in this area. This is another initiative where the effort is to be able to handhold the initiative of the state government and the center's programs such that the expected delivered outcomes are brought out. And we have seen a lot of success rate in many of our friends in the far-flung rural areas, very happy with government's offer of centralizing and offering the land record systems, the birth and death certificates, and also the board examination results and others. So this was just to sort of bring forth this point also, that the government's initiatives are now more top-down and bottom-up, so as to complete the entire cycle of implementation of its policies and national strategies. I've already mentioned the line titles in Karnataka is one of the most successful e-delivery of services that the country has seen, and railway reservation is something very common to most of us now. Similarly, property registration and e-seva centers are being well utilized by most of the citizens in the country. This is how the existing electronic service delivery model looks like to most of us. So we see that there is a multiplicity and overlap, leading to a little bit of confusion because of the overlap. So therefore, nobody is responsible and everybody is responsible. This leads to many of the services or the actual implementation getting a little distorted or not reaching their final goal. And this is what needs to slightly change and is expected to change if we deploy cloud computing. So this is what the government profile remains, in spite of us making efforts towards getting a e-governance plan, program in place in the country. And so we feel that the government can look into, the government is now looking into deploying cloud for reaching out to services. Some of the reasons that I thought I would like to express here is the focus has majorly remained in the urban areas, and access points in rural areas have basically only been government's initiatives of setting up common service centers and CICs also. The CICs were community information centers set up mostly in the northeastern region of the country. This has led to limited coverage, and some of the state level implementations have not really yielded fruit as was expected by the state center initiatives in this direction. There is we see still a limited integration in terms of data sharing, scalability, and this also brings in efforts in silos towards bringing in security into our systems, delivery systems and our establishments. And the lack of central coordination is seen in terms of the country still working towards interoperability and open source services, tool development for services for our citizen service for the country. So, while the objective was to integrate the security network, server storage, such as to strengthen the information protection system, accumulate value-creating information, and have an enhanced operation stability through the e-government plan, we are still working towards it, and there seems to be quite a few lacuna in the government plan to reach out and to integrate the initiatives of the state and the center in this area. This is how I understand a cloud to be, and I think this is the correct understanding that I have. And with this understanding of cloud architecture, which is a service-oriented architecture, government would essentially look at its features to deploy its services through the cloud. So these are the interesting features of the cloud that I capture: the accessibility, the flexibility, the agility, the service management, all this through a centralized management system such that the efforts on infrastructure building, software, and security systems to be put in place and validation would get consolidated and much reduced from distributed data centers that are at present available by the public and the private service providers. Naturally, we are also looking at a lot of cost efficiency in reaching out services here. We are also clear that this would bring in a homogeneity, because this will enforce directly or indirectly interoperability amongst the various service providers and the services that the government is going to offer through some of their third-party agents. And of course, scalability is something which will be easy for us to implement here, because these are the issues that most of you look at when you're looking at a cloud. Server access security, internet access security, database access security, and program access security. Ask me if these are the real worries of the government for deploying cloud. Maybe, may not be, because we know that these aspects would be covered by the technology and researchers, technology developers and researchers when they bring out services in the cloud. So the main worries that we have remain the same. We still need to look at confidentiality, integrity, availability, and non-repudiation, whether it was the e-government way of reaching out services or it will be the cloud computing mode of reaching out government services in the future. The challenges that the government would face, therefore, would be connectivity in rural areas. We are still not fully fiber connected, in spite of the efforts of BSNL and the USO initiative. We are still laying out fibers there. There is a lot of exploration going on in terms of using wireless mechanisms to reach out connectivity in many of the rural areas. And if we manage to get connectivity there, whether the bandwidth would be good enough for us to say that the villagers would be able to have equitable access to the computing, to the services offered through a cloud to them. So that is another issue where the government will have to see how to bring in equitable access across the country, beyond regions of cities or rural areas. There is still a gap in terms of provisioning high-speed internet within most of the government departments. I'm not talking here in terms of the cities or the rural areas, but in general, we are still see a gap in the accessibility to the internet-based information services or services in many of our regions which are much farther off from the center. So the statewide area network and the SDCs are expected to help us mitigate this problem. But these are not our main issues that we need to look at as Government of India. The main worries that we need to address are, we still have different service provider level, service level agreements, which will need to have to be now normalized. There is an issue of data privacy in cloud and a general perception that a cloud would not be the safe option for deploying for the service providers to reach out to a larger mass without the security issues in place. There is an issue of open standards and interoperability which we still not solved. And there is this issue of vendor lock-in in many of our services that we take through our service providers. This is my last slide, where the target of cloud deployment, especially for e-governance, this is how we expect, or this is what we foresee would be the way by which we would be deploying the cloud for reaching out e-government services to our citizens across the country. This may soon change with a little more understanding of how the clouds will be better deployed by the government. But at present, the first understanding and the first way in which we think we can use the cloud to deploy services with our existing infrastructure setup and services looks like this particular scenario. And I would like to say thank you to all of you to bear with me, because I have intervened in the serious discussion of how you will be attacked by botnets and how your systems are in worry, because even if you have purchased the best of the security tools and patches, you still do not know what is happening on your system or in the network of your organization while you're thinking you are completely secure from any attack. So thank you so much.